I was walking through the branch. I was having chest pain. I'm like, holy crap, I'm having a heart attack. And like, I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want anyone to think I couldn't handle the pressure. So I grabbed my keys in my purse and I drive myself to the Trillium ER and they wheel you in. And I remember I was wired up, EKG and everything. And I just remember thinking to myself, is being who I thought everyone wanted me to be, was it going to cost me my life?
From Sixth Story, I'm your producer, Diana Hong, and you're listening to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the show where we talk with the entrepreneur next door about the stories behind their success and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today's guest is the program director and lead coach for How to Fascinate and the creator of the Certified Fascinate Advisor program. She helps her clients get 100% clear on their unique talents, skills, and expertise so that they can use their personal strengths to grow their business, and she has worked with companies like Lowe, Toyota, and Schneider Electric. In today's episode, she and Hilda will talk about why it's important to embrace who you are, how to excel in business as an introvert, why she moved away from Toronto to the country, and so much more. We hope you enjoy our conversation with Finka Jerkovic.
So most of my career, I say 2 decades and counting, I won't say how many more on top of that, I spent in financial services. So I've spent most of my career in the Canadian banking system and started in an entry-level role and really made a career out of in financial services. And so I did various roles, from service roles to sales roles, and went into corporate strategy and worked with strategy team and sales strategy. Then came back out as a sales leader and managed commercial bankers. So a lot of the work that I did actually was very in tune with my entrepreneurial spirit, because I was actually either a advisor that helped business customers, or I was leading teams that help business clients and business owners. The banking system can be, it's bank. So this whole notion of having an entrepreneurial spirit and having creativity and all those things, having a venue to do that in the organization was really, really helpful. And then from there, I really discovered leading people. I love people development. I did enjoy helping clients, all those pieces. But it really, I think I'll say probably in 2012 is when I had this epiphany of where I really wanted to drill down my expertise and all the experience that I had. And I wanted to get into more coaching, training and development, and helping leaders be better leaders in the organizations and the teams that they led. And so that's the impetus of 2012 and 2013, getting certified as a coach and then starting my own business in that year.
What made you get into the bank in the first place? Because you said the bank is the bank. So I think coded, what that means is banks tend to be more conservative in the way they do things. And you're talking entrepreneurial spirit within a banking organization. How did you decide banking was the first stop in your career?
I had some things going on at home. My parents had just separated. It was a hard time for me. And I was a teenager, for that matter. Like I was still, in my late teen years. And it was just this kind of thing. Okay, I started working there part-time. And I think the bank for me, it gave me a place when parents separate and divorce happens. It's hard. And I was the oldest of 4 kids. My youngest sister was 4 at the time. And so I'm 18, she's 4. And there's a sense of responsibility one takes on being the eldest. And the bank for me was a place where I could find myself. I could create a life that I could be in control of versus, when parents, when we live with parents, like when we have parents, you're not in control of those things. I couldn't control my parents' marriage. I couldn't do anything to fix or repair that. But, my career, who I was, how I was showing up at work and driving and moving up that corporate ladder, it was a place that allowed me to find who I was and create another identity. And so that's why I said, it was when you cut lemons, you make lemonade. It was the place that I was kind of like right now where there's a lot of things happening that we can't control. And how do you take the situation and the environments that we're in and use them to figure out where you need to go next? It might not be the ideal or the thing we wanted. Looking back now at that experience, many years ago, it was the best thing that happened for me. It was not where I dreamed I would go, but it was where I ended up being.
When I first met you, I don't know how many years ago now, it's got to be maybe even 10 years, eh? 7 to 10 years, something like that. And you were going to teach us on how to use Fascination Advantage. And your name at the time was Josie. And I remember that. And then all of a sudden it was something different. It's Finka.
So yeah, that was that. So when I was 6 years old, so I was my birth name is Finka. That is my legal name. Josie, just so it's not even written on anything. Like it's not on a birth certificate, on a driver's license. It was on a business card. That's as legal as it got. But so Finka was the name I was born with. And when I was 6 years old, I was going into a new school. And as we were entering the school, so growing up, names like Finka were very unique and very different. Lisa, Mary, Kathy, that was the norm. And so as we were entering the school, she's holding me by my arm and my hand, and we were going through the corridor, and she looks down at me and she says, Finka, do you want to change your name? And I'm like, my name? What do you mean change my name? And all in her good wisdom in her heart, she says, well, you have a different name, maybe to make it easier on yourself, pick something, a little bit easier to go by. And so the only name I could think of was our neighbor, her daughter. They babysat us every now and then. My parents had to work. Their daughter, who was 12 years old, her name was Josie. And I loved Josie. If I could be Josie, I would want everything she did. And I was 6, right? So 6 and she's 12, anything she wore, her perfume she wear, I would just mimic and copy her. And I said, you know what, Mom, I want to be called Josie. And that was it. And so that was, she registered me in school as Josie. And I actually did go by both names. I went by Finka in my personal relationships, everyone at home, cousins, relatives, everyone calls me Finka. And then at school, and then later when I started at the bank, everyone called me Josie. And it was kind of like this notion of, it was that first lesson around being different, that sometimes when things are different about us, that we change in order not to stand out, in order not to get noticed, in order not to be different. And it wasn't until I had this moment of, just kind of the dark night of the soul moment when you hit sort of that rock bottom, which for me did happen in that, 2012 timeline, was when I realized I needed to stop changing who I was and started being who I really was in order to not go down pathways which weren't serving me and were ending me either up in exhaustion or, hurting my relationships, or, you just driving to what, and then not maybe being as content or happy as you could be. And so then, yeah. And then you met me, and then it's like, oh, she has another name. That was partly the reclaim you who you are fully and wholly. And the irony about the whole name thing was a couple years ago, and this is like, this is maybe 3 years ago. So, living this way and going through this name journey, I was with a friend at a concert, and she's telling me the meaning of her name. And I'm like, I wonder what Finka means. And so, I pick up my phone and I Google Finka, and lo and behold, this webpage, and it's called Behind the Name. And it says Finka, and it says Croatian origin. So that's my background. I'm Croatian heritage. And the definitions are Josefina, Josephine, and Josie in English translation. So that was like the direct English translation. I'm like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I picked the perfect name.
Out of a hat, but the next door neighbor who you idolized and wanted to be like, you became.
And at the end of it, so my lesson in all of it was, everything that we are and everything that we're striving to be is already here. And I thought I wanted to be a Josie version, but at the end, the road leads you back, like the longest journeys from here to here, right? From our head to our heart.
Yeah.
And so that was the place where I just kind of I stopped thinking about who I needed to be and just connected to who I was. And it was always here. I was always here.
What was that transition?
So I'm continuing to learn about myself, and I'm continuing to learn how to be more of me in the work and in my life and in my relationships.
My name's Hilda, and I remember describing to somebody over the phone because they'd never met me, I'll be that German that's really tall, right? And of course, Hilda is a German name, and it actually means battle maiden. And I remember going to the library, my brother picking up a book and flipping through all of the names like you did. And they got to their names were like Noble Lord and War, and they get to my name and it means battle maiden. Like, do I look like a battle maiden? I don't even like fighting. Like, I don't like competition where it's a win and lose, because I don't like that. So to walk around with your name being battle maiden, they don't know that, but I knew that deep inside I wasn't a battle maiden. So I didn't really embrace my name. It was okay, but I wish I had a normal name. My dad wanted me to be different. He wanted me not to have the name of most Chinese girls in those days, so I'm dating myself. But Linda, Susie, May, Annie, these were the names, but he gave me Hilda. And then I embraced it later when I actually got my Fascination Advantage. I turned out to be, and we'll ask you more about this, I turned out when I took the Fascination Advantage tool to be, prestige is my primary, which means I'm striving for quality. I'm always looking to make things better. And power, which is I know how to make decisions quickly. That combination has what's called an archetype. And my archetype is called the victor. So here I am, a battle maiden and a victor. And I thought, oh my God, I don't like this. I'm not competitive. I don't want to just win. And Finka, the wise Finka, says, no, Hilda, victor is really good, because victor is about helping people create winning solutions. That's the win. It's not you just winning. It's the win-win. Oh, I said, that's me. And that's when I realized battle maiden, victor, somebody is trying to tell me something. And that's when I was able to embrace the victor and embrace my name. So I wanted to reinforce that people should, think about who they are. And that was part of my who I am journey.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I think when we can sometimes becoming who we are, we can also take a position like, oh, it's like feels too egotistical, or like I'm going to be full of myself. And what we have to think about is, if you don't bring all of you, for you, Hilda, if you don't bring your essence of focusing on excellence and high quality and looking for better solutions, if you don't help people make decisions, if you don't help guide people to have more confidence, and if you don't stand in your leadership, we miss out on that part of you to help the rest of us create that. Yeah. And so I always look at this work as the journey to become you is part for you, because you get to have a better life, like just a way better life, and then the after effects, because you're not trying to be anyone else other than you. Guess what? You attract the right people, maybe the right partner in your life. You get along with your kids better. And then when you think about your business, you get to attract the right clients and do the work that is right for how you get to help them, because that's what they're looking for from you. Because, if I need to, I'm sure you can see it happening in your work, like your clients are coming to you to help them make people decisions, that develop strategies. If you were someone who didn't bring those qualities, then they wouldn't get it from you. And if you didn't embrace those qualities about yourself, right?
I mentioned Fascination Advantage, and I said that I'm a victor. When did you take that first tool, and what did that do for you? Because now you're a coach teaching people to become certified Fascinate Advisors, which I proudly am one of those. But share how that first started.
So I was back in that 2012 moment when I was...
That was a pivotal year for you. Wow.
It was a huge year. I was a branch manager at that point in my career. I knew I was meant for more, and I wanted to make a bigger impact. I also was very unhappy because the way in which they were teaching us to sell, It was going against every grain in my body. So it was very transactional, very micromanagement. They would check on us every hour on what did you sell? What did your team sell? Who did they sell to? And it just felt really exhausting. And I was resisting that method of selling for months and months and months. But at one point, when you're working in an organization, it's just like, all right, fine, I'll do it your way.
Yeah.
You work for them. So it's like, I'll follow it. I did it for 2 weeks and it ended me up in the emergency room.
Oh.
And so it was like a visceral impact. Like I was walking through the branch. I was having chest pain. I'm like, holy crap, I'm having a heart attack. And like, I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want anyone to think I couldn't handle the pressure. So I grabbed my keys in my purse and I drive myself to the Trillium ER and they wheel you in. And I remember I was wired up, EKG and everything. And I just remember thinking to myself, and it was, you know, when you have like deep, those big elephant tears streaming down, just deep sadness. And I thought, is being who I thought everyone wanted me to be, was it going to cost me my life? And that was that, like, you know, following what everyone wanted me to do, showing up the way I thought I needed to be, taking on a Josie high performer, ambitious, career-oriented persona. All those things like came like literally crashing in that moment. And I walked out of that hospital. I said, if I walk out of here alive, I'm going to do things differently. And I did. So it wasn't a heart attack, thankfully. It was a panic attack. So I'd never had that experience before, never had one since, but it was just one of those like, wake up, or else life is not going to take you down the path that you really deserve and want. And then, so I made the decision internally that I wanted to change. And then like 3 weeks later, in comes in my inbox I was on someone's email list and it said, hey, we're giving away 1,000 free Fascinate tests. Take one, take advantage of it. So I remember I was in my office, I take this test. And at this point, I haven't really like dived into personality tests or anything like this, right? And I get the result and I'm like, oh my God, this is me. And so my profile is that I'm a trendsetter, innovation. So I lead with innovation and creativity. And my secondary, like your primary, is prestige. So it's all about excellence and delivering high work. And so in that moment, it's like, oh my goodness. Like, so just picture a trendsetter in a bank their whole life. So for anyone listening in, like it wasn't the moment where I decided, all right, I'm bailing out on this banking career. I got to go and find something else that will better suit my personality type. It wasn't that. What I've come to learn and firmly believe now is that who you are, it was like the bank, I didn't need to run away from the bank. They need trendsetters. They so need big, bold ideas. They so need change makers. And so what I wanted to learn was, how do I show up as authentically as I can with the gifts and talents I knew I brought in that environment? And so this is the two-way street. Be who you are. And at the same time, we have to also learn how to communicate who we are and the value we bring in a way or in a language that others will hear and understand.
Exactly. How do we connect who we authentically are with confidence and send a message so that the other person receives it, because they're different and they perceive it different. And that's the beauty I love about fascination, is that we get to understand who we are and we learn about how other people are and how we connect with each other. It's all about communication. And the more we understand who we are and who others are, the more effective we can make our communications.
It is. And so like you've got someone who leads with innovation working. And so one of the other advantages in this Fascinate system is the advantage of trust. Trust is my dormant, which means it's not the strongest one I have. It's out of the 7, it's the least, my least likely to be successful in. I can do it if I want, but it's the one that takes me more effort. But I'm working in an organization that is a trust-based advantage.
Right.
And I'm innovation. And so when you're bringing big, bold ideas to someone who relies on the tried and true, it's very difficult to get people to buy into those ideas. And what I learned was, how do you meet people where they're at? So someone with trust needs to understand, how is this idea, how has it worked in the past? Where has it been tested? How will, so it needs some past record. Who else has done it? They need to know that it was tried before, or at least some evidence to support your idea for them to say, hey, I get that, and I want to listen to it a little bit more. And so that was the biggest learning. It was, and every time, I know for you too, Hilda, as you go and do these workshops, helping people understand their fascination advantage, the two biggest ahas people get is like, oh my goodness, I know who I am. I want to be more of that. And then two is I get to understand who my colleagues are. And in your case, as you're helping managers get to understand their employees better, because how they lead is very different than what their employees are going to be receptive to when it comes to a leadership style.
I know that, we should kind of explain what Fascination Advantage is, because there are so many tools out there. There's Myers-Briggs, there's Strength Finders, there's others. You've gravitated to the Fascination Advantage tool, and I have as well. And I want to hear your story, and then I'll share my insights as to why fascination has much deeper meaning for me. I think I love tools, and I love the compliment that it gives me, but fascination is one that really resonates with me in a way that the others don't quite do. So share fascination, little fascination 101 tidbit for people so they understand what it is.
Yeah. I too, I agree. Like I love Strengths Finders. I love Myers-Briggs. I think those help, like Myers-Briggs helped me identify I was an introvert. That was super useful. Strengths Finders let me know what my top 5 strengths are. But when it came to like one of my strengths is input, it's like, really, how do I sell input? Like, I love data. I love research. I love information. I love taking stuff in. It doesn't seem so sexy. But when you take a fascination test, so when you take a fascination test, what I love about it is it doesn't take the viewpoint of how we see ourselves. It takes the viewpoint on how the world sees us, because it's more about just like brands, they're sending out signals all the time. And so the Fascination Advantage has these 7 advantages. So all of us are sending signals based on these 7 advantages. The ones that people respond to the best are our top 2. And so that's that primary and secondary. What I love about it is it's built on how the world sees us. So it's built on branding and marketing principles. So on the external perspective. So that's one. And then the second is that I'm on this whole bender right now that our brain is wired on negativity bias. Like we are wired to look at what's broken, wrong, and not working in our lives. It is hardwired in our old brain to look at all of those things. And we will look at, you go out in an environment, our brain subconsciously is doing all this wonderful work, keeping us out of trouble. It's also doing it internally in our brain. So when you go into a networking event or you're applying for a job, our brain will automatically go to all the things we don't have, the certifications, the credentials, the experience, the potential, all the stuff, all the garbage we tell ourselves. And so that's negativity bias, hardwired habit in our brain. So what we actually need to build is positivity bias, thinking more about the good stuff. And that actually is more part of our new brain. And we have to be more deliberate and conscious of doing that. Back to why Fascinate. Fascinate is positioned in a way where it teaches us there is nothing broken, there is nothing wrong, and there's nothing to fix about you. And so when you read this profile report, it is all about embracing who you are, these qualities and these advantages that you bring, and to really fully embrace them and bring more of them. And so where some, like, and for instance, like the input, my brain can quickly go to negativity bias and tell me why would anyone care about input? Seems like such a big deal. But when I read my profile report as a trendsetter, I'm like, everybody needs this. So it's that notion of the way it's positioned and presented is in such a positive way that I know for me, it hit the right nerve at the right time in the right place that got me to the trajectory of where I am today, but it helped me move towards that over the last, 8 years. Even as a person that teaches other people how to get clients or how to get corporate work, I am still doing that work for myself. And so that never goes away. So I'm always the type of person that I'm learning. I'm a student, and that I believe helps. It helps me be a better teacher. Helps me meet people where they're at least, because I know the challenges they're going through.
I want to make sure people understand fascination is just a tool. It isn't, we teach fascination. We have a framework to which we teach fascination, because some people are artists and they use fascination to help the artists community. Some are in the athletic world. And I know you know others, but it's just a tool. So I want you to talk about, in your business now, you are an introvert. You are using the tool as a part of what you do. And I've heard two things in following your career and your business. One is the daring introvert, and the other one now is brilliant difference. And I think this is part of your marketing strategy, like your strength, like daring introvert. Like sounds like an oxymoron, right? And people say, you can actually have a course on that. I was telling the production team yesterday, oh yeah, I'm doing Finka's interview tomorrow, and she's an introvert, and my production guy Minwoo said, I'm going to be interested in learning about hers, because he's an introvert and he's taken the Fascination Vantage assessment, and we've talked about his strengths and his advantages. So can you talk about both of them, or either of them, brilliant difference and daring introvert?
Yeah, I'll start with the daring introvert, because that's kind of the next step after. It's interesting. So as we call these, I realized I was a trendsetter. So that was something external mirrored back to me. And that was kind of the first test that I took. And then I started taking other tests and learning more and deeply understanding my introversion qualities. And so it was one of those, you got mirrored back things you already knew. Like this is like, I think when we either get feedback from other people or you take a personality test, you're just getting mirrored back what you already know. And there's something about validation.
Yes, it's the validation part.
It's the validation. And I remember hearing an interview with Oprah, and she said something along the lines of, and I'm not going to quote it accurately, but it was the essence. This is the essence of what I took away. So we'll just put it, this is the Finkas story she took away from that excerpt that she had. That all of us, all we really want is validation. And when we have validation, it gives us the courage and it gives us the confidence to keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. Right. And she had this story about how she explained it was, even Beyonce needs validation. And so she said that, she was, I don't know if it was a Super Soul Sunday or what interview she was doing, but they were sitting together. They did their interview. The interview finishes. Cameras are off. And Beyonce leans into Oprah and says, "Was that okay?" And it was like, yes. Like even Beyonce asked if that was okay. She needed validation. And I think that there's something to be said about, it's okay if we get validated from the external. And so for me, that journey of introversion was, I needed to validate that this thing that I knew about me was a real thing. And that it wasn't because other people were different, extroverted, outgoing, very social, easy to come up with small talk. I'm so good at a punchline, but like 2 days later, I'm not an in the moment person. If I'm familiar with a topic, I'm ready to jump in. But if it's something that's unfamiliar, I got to sit back. I got to listen. I got to observe. I'm taking in the information. And then I need my brain and my heart and my system to do what it does best. It goes away. I go for a walk. I go for a run. I might read some other material, and it does something inside to come up with better ideas. And so that's the introvert part. And so that told me that there was another way we can be in this world without having to be the traditional way that we see outside. But then you say introvert, and introverts are usually like, they're in behind a cubicle. They don't like people, and they are antisocial. And it's like, that's not what introversion is. They love people. They like to be outgoing. They like to help. They like to work. And so that whole notion of the daring part of us is that, how do we embrace these qualities of quiet, thoughtfulness, deliberate observation, mindful of energy reserves and you need to be alone to get refueled? How do you take that part of you, and there's such a strength and wisdom in that, and be daring, go do the thing that you want to do, whether it's open up your business, apply for the job, raise your hand in that boardroom, ask for the promotion or assignment. How do you do those things? And so that was the impetus of the Daring Introvert. And as your work serves a certain segment, it also evolves. And so the other part of my work then evolves to your brilliant difference. And your brilliant difference, the whole notion of that is, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, a trendsetter or a victor or a wise owl, we all have these brilliances that are in us. How do we use them and make a difference? Because that's what it's all about. There's you, and you have these beautiful gifts. But if we don't get to experience them and have you play and dance in your work, in your life, in your business with them, guess what? We all lose out. The world lose out because you didn't get to use that to make a difference. And so that's that whole notion of brilliant difference, of take the thing that's in you, the gift that you've been gifted with, and use it to make a meaningful impact. And it doesn't mean one day my daughter had this t-shirt on and it said, "This girl's going to change the world." And I bought it for her. And when I bought it, I was like, "Oh, that's such a cool t-shirt, right? That's a cool t-shirt." And then that moment that I read it when she was wearing it, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that is a whole lot of pressure on her." Like, imagine she's gonna it's a whole lot of pressure that you're going to change the world, because that's a big responsibility. And the whole notion that I look at changing the world now is changing the world is how we show up in this moment, how I am present with my daughter, or not present, because that can be changing the world too in a way that I don't want to be present, like change in my business, change with clients. So it's the micro, we change the world in the micro moments. And so that's the difference that we're all here to make. So, if you're like, "I don't know the big change, I don't have the big vision," don't stress. Just go out and just do good work. Show up authentically. And that's making a difference, because not everyone does that. And we attempt to, but yeah, we need some of these tools to help us do it a little bit better.
Let's move on to moving to the country. I have followed your journey in terms of the lavender fields and the honey bees. Tell us what transpired to make you move there. I know you're enjoying it, so tell the listeners that part of your life.
When you said moving to the country, so the first thing that popped into my mind was the moment we were in the midst of deciding, should we or shouldn't we? And we we're from Toronto, lived our whole life in the city. Both my husband, my daughter was 7 years old at the time. She was in grade 2, so 6, 7, around that age. And I remember, so this is kind of one of those moments where you're like, I need some wisdom, I need some guidance. So I had just gone to pick up some smoked ribs, and everyone's at home waiting to eat dinner. And I'm driving back home, and I stop at a stoplight. And I'm like, I just need a sign. And we're like in the knee deep, like, should we or shouldn't we? And it was so funny. So I'm like, I need a sign. Should we move? And on the radio, no word of a lie, this song comes on, and you just triggered it for me. It was, "Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches." So that song, that comes in there, and I'm like, okay, we are going. So I literally walk in the house, I drop the ribs, and I'm like, we are moving to the country.
When you asked for a sign, that couldn't have been more obvious or blatant, like, listen, Finka.
No, I'm telling you, stop deliberating. So the introvert needs to analyze it to details, and the prestige. I mean, all that was happening. And that was the defining thing, was all right, we're going. And it was one of those decisions, because I know sometimes, especially even now, we have big decisions we're making about our lives. They're hard. They're hard to make, because you're leaving what you've always known and a path and a life you thought you're going to create and live. We thought my husband had a full-time business in the city. I had a full-time corporate career. And now we're going to throw all that away. We worked so hard for all that. And we're going to move and start from scratch in the country. No friends, no family, nothing nearby. And the decision wasn't light. My husband and I had conversations about our values and about our goals. I'm going to say stuff that we should have talked about before we got married, and we didn't. Was that we were talking about
that deep? Wow,
that deep, right? And I just get goosebumps thinking about it right now. And he said, and the two questions we asked, and it was, if we move and we fail and we had to come back, what's the worst that can happen? So we painted the picture. Real estate's going to go up sky high in Toronto. We won't be able to afford living there. And if we did that, oh, good God, we would have to live in my in-laws' basement. Like, that's going to be worst case scenario. And it was like, all right, so could you handle that? So asking yourself, like, is that the worst? If that was the worst, it was like, all right, we could handle that. Like, we knew that was the worst. All right, so we got that out of the way. And then the second piece of it was asking about, would we regret more looking back at our life that we didn't do it and said, wow, what could have life, like a what if we had what life could have been, having that conversation? Or was it easier to live with the regret of if we did it and failed and we were living? And so at the end, it was, so it wasn't a regret that it would all work out. We wanted actually the two worst case scenarios. Worst case scenario was living with regret that you didn't do it, or living you did it and you had to move back to the basement.
Yeah.
And we wanted to actually try it, even if it meant living back in the basement. And that was the regret we'd rather live with.
I like how you were very analytical about it.
Let's call it thoughtful.
Thoughtful, yes. Thoughtful. And that you really thought about those. You asked the questions that would help you visualize how bad it can be. Because oftentimes the negative part is thinking bad thoughts, but they're not articulating, and it's just getting worse. It's just overwhelming. But to narrow it down, what's the worst that can happen if we don't do it, or if we do it and fail, right? Those are the ones, and then that gives you reality, because you said, okay, if it's the worst, yeah, we could live with that. I hope we don't have to, but we can.
I know.
Right. Yeah, because you I don't know how you manage to do the business and all the work that you have to do on your farm, because, you show us with your lavender fields, how you're bringing those in, and then the fresh fruits and vegetables that you've got out of the yard.
Yeah. So that's the other part of this. Like, the more we start embracing ourselves, the less energy and effort it takes to think of trying to be someone you're not. So like, that's wasted energy I didn't have to do anymore. And so where did we divert it? I diverted it. So we moved here. It's been 5 years that we've been living here now. I never fathomed we have chickens, we have horses, we grow our own lavender, make our own lavender product. We have bees, we have our own gardens. All of these things would not have been possible, I would say, if I didn't embrace who I was fully. And I'm continually learning how to do that even better and more so. And I'll say it takes a village to do this stuff. In our village, it's small and mighty. It's my husband, my daughter, and myself. But we're in there in the fields working together, canning right now. It's fall season, so we're harvesting a lot of our garden, doing the tomatoes and the peaches, all that stuff. But I'd say I think when we don't, so where does time come from? It comes from energy. And so when we have energy, we have more time. It's kind of like, that's how we make time. We never have enough time. But because I wasn't using energy wasting on thinking and trying to create a life I thought I needed to be to appease other people, or who I thought I needed to be to get happiness, and really figured out what makes me happy and makes my husband and my daughter happy, and just really focusing on that, I didn't waste energy. And so we get, like life sometimes it's crazy, it's full. I would not say busy. I would say it's full. And there are moments where my husband will look at me and say, like, we cannot add one more thing. Like, just stop. So just stop. No more trend setting, no more ideas. Let's just keep. And so we, but now we're starting to enjoy a little, like, we're going out and canoeing and doing stuff in Ontario that we get to do that we would never have had an opportunity. I was afraid of bees my whole life. I go in a hive and I'm learning how to be a better beekeeper. I love them now. They're so cool. I watch them. It's just like, they're so cute. And meanwhile, before they'd be like, no, you're not going. They're not. There's nothing cute about a bee, but they're so cute. They're cute.
Okay. The bees I like are the honey bees on the jars. So did your husband continue with a corporate type of role, or what's he up to nowadays?
He's a trades guy. So this is the beauty of when you live on a farm. to have a handyman. So he's an electrician by trade. He had a business in Toronto he had a partner with. He sold his half to the partner, and he'll go in occasionally a couple times a month to go and do that work. And for the most part, he does some local jobs, a couple jobs in Toronto. And then for the most part, my daughter, I'm like so happy to say, she has had the gift of having both her parents home since grade 2. And she is going into grade 8 right now.
Wow. That's
so she
cool.
gets to have breakfast with us. We get to take her to school. She comes home and her parents are home. And so, yeah, it's been, I think of what life could have been with after school, before school, hurry up and eat dinner, drive you to here, all that life. We left that behind and we made something else.
I love how you express the values that you now have and the journey that you have created along the way, and how you'll continue on that journey. And it's making you a stronger, more authentic person that you want to be. And that's what I mean by strong. It's who you want to be. And you've shared that throughout the timelines of your life, trying to find out who you want to be and finding out that you were trying to be something that others might have wanted or you thought you might have wanted. I know you're writing a book now, and I suspect it's a bit more about that. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So it's one of those, and for you, I'm sure you've had those moments where it's like there was a seed planted in you that you wanted to do something. And for any of the listeners, if you've had the seed planted of wanting to write a book. So that was, someone had asked me yesterday, so when did you start, when was the first idea of writing a book? And I'm like, well, that was 5 years ago. So that was a long time ago. Actually sitting down to write, that started, been about an 18-month journey, I would say. And I started writing a book, and I never thought I'd be writing a book on this topic. But now that I've written the book, it's like, of course I would write a book on this topic because it's everything I've done in my whole career. And so the book is called Sell from Love. And it's a book that teaches you loving yourself and loving your client and loving your offer, the thing that you're selling, that is the gateway to success, to happiness. And that, when you can find all of that through a business and through selling the things that we do. So it's a book that teaches people on how to sell authentically, with empathy and with purpose. And it's not a transactional thing, that we're actually out there doing some really cool transformational work for our clients. And we've got things that people need. And so, yeah, and so that's where I'm at right now. Very excited about the journey of writing. Was probably another book I could write about.
Notes version of that journey.
Yeah.
Highlights and lowlights for those of us who are trying to embark on that journey of writing a book. Any tidbits that you want to share? I'm sure there are listeners out there that are now kind of going, well, so tell us.
Yeah. I'm going to say it's probably the most challenging thing to do is to sit down and write what you have in here and what you have in here and making sense of it on a page. And so I'm going to say going the journey, don't go it alone. I had a super book coach that helped me along, and I'm happy to share if you wanted to know who it was. She was a phenomenal partner, guide, mentor through the whole process. She also was the type of person that she's a best-selling author, has written numerous books. Her book just came out. Can I just tell you who she is?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Her name is Jennifer Loudon. She wrote this book. It just came out now. Why Bother? Best-selling. It just was published in April of 2020. And she was just someone that, so when you're embarking on a project like this, just having someone to give you perspective, someone to give you how hard it is and to pick you up to let you know. So while she was writing Why Bother, helping me write Sell from Love, she was also experiencing the challenges I was going through as a writer and that she did. And so that was very comforting because it, again, validated the experience of writing is not always easy. Writing sometimes is hard, and that even the pros, the experts, experience it. And so that to me was super huge, which gave me permission to keep writing. So if you're writing or creating anything for that matter, it's going to get hard. It's going to suck. It's going to be messy middle, messy, like it's not even messy, it's not even a word to describe it. But when even the experts and the people that have the bestsellers go through that same process, it's like, oh, okay, good. I'm in the same arena with them, which is cool. And then I wrote 40,000 words, and I sent those 40,000 words to Jennifer, and she gave me feedback. So the first version of this book was everything but the kitchen sink. Like, I thought I had to put everything in it. And she had this really tender, loving, but I'm going to rip that Band-Aid off right now feedback moment with me. And so being able to take feedback was really important in this process for me. Learning, I thought I was good at taking feedback. But when you write something about your personal journey, about personal lessons you've learned, you make a book personal. And then all of a sudden, you lose objectivity about it. And so then when I got feedback that, there's some good stuff in here, but there's just a lot of stuff that might not need to be in here, it hurt. It hurt hard. And I thought, like, I could take feedback. I could take a good feedback. This kind of feedback was different, and took a month off. So sometimes when you get feedback, don't let it derail you. So this is the thing when we write a project like that. I took a month off. Thankfully, I was so busy traveling with work and doing a lot of speaking, and I was out on the road, so I didn't have to think about the book. But I came back first week of September, laid out a new table of contents, and I just started pumping out chapters every 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks on one chapter. I'd write, and 12 weeks later, the book was written. And so,
was it different from the first version then, or was it a compilation of a little bit of newness and the 40,000 words original?
It was all the things that were in that first version showed up in the final version, but the way they were placed, there was just a rhyme and reason for it. Like, now I was telling why this story was important, why this tool was valuable. There was structure to it. So sometimes, how Anne Lamott says, you got to get your first draft.
Yeah.
So I look at this. Everything but the kitchen sink goes first. Then the first draft. And then you write a second, third, fourth, fifth. I'm actually in my sixth draft version. I got to 6. I wrote this book 6 times, actually 7 if I count everything but the kitchen sink. So 7 versions of this book before I got to publication.
Oh, well, thanks for that tip.
But you know what? So then this is what I'm going to tell you guys. I have fallen in love with the book so much more because I had to write it 7 times.
Yeah. That first, the first one was probably the cathartic. Get it all out there. And then where the parts that make sense to share and for your reader to get value out of it. So you probably need to do that cathartic dump.
It was. And I think, and I don't know, like when I write my second book, I feel like it'll be tightened, but I think the process will be the same. You do a big dump, a big download, and you look at it and you try to make sense of it. You make sense of that in the first draft, and then you keep rewriting it. And what I love is what you just said about that is it becomes then more about your reader. What are the things they need to know? What's most important to them? What's going to bring more value versus, and that's the lens that you approach it after. And so that personal objectivity and identity I found in that first version, it actually by the third and fourth version, I can actually look at the text and not think of it as part of me anymore. It's a thing that I got to be part of making.
I remember earlier in life having the time to write things about how I was feeling or whatever, that diary kind of thing. I don't have that time anymore. And somebody asked me to write something about my life, and it poured out. It just poured out 12 pages later, and it was cathartic. And then I said, I'm not quite finished with it. I think I have to go back to it. But when I went back to it, I read it from a more impersonal perspective now, and a memory that I want to lock here, but set it and forget it. And now it's past, and it helped resolve some issues. I had to talk about somebody in my past life and just share the goods and the bads. And now it's done, it's gone, and it was cathartic. That's why I use that word.
Yeah. And I think that writing is cathartic. It is like, it's like self-therapy. It's a way to process, because sometimes when we keep the stuff inside of here and here, it gets stuck and lodged. But when you can put it out inside in front of you and you write about it, and then you come back and you look at it, it's like, okay. So I think writing is such a gift if we can pick it up, and a tool for self-healing and self-discovery.
Yeah. So I'm going to declare it here, because it's got to happen or else it'll never happen. I've declared that I am writing my own book. I have my chapter outlines, and I started writing. And so I know it's there. So I have to do that cathartic thing, and I have to do it. And I've tried to discipline myself for 2 chapters every month. But we're on chapter 3/4. So I know the road ahead of me a bit, and you may get a phone call from me once in a while just to say, come on, what do I need to do? Take a break or whatever. But it is coming out soon, isn't it? It's coming out soon. Your book is coming out soon. Tell us when.
November 10th, and it'll be available on Amazon, or you can find it on the sellfromlove.com website. And I'm super excited. So along with it, if you are struggling with selling and trying to figure out, where do you need to love? Is it loving yourself or loving your client or loving your offer even more? Where is the gap? I also have a self-love test to help you identify exactly which area might not be working for you. So it's good, because then you don't have to struggle and try to figure out, okay, where do I go? And so you know exactly what you need to solve for. So is it you're authentically you and you love everything that you bring, but you're struggling to connect with clients and figure out, how you can love them more, or they can love you more, then, it might be on the client side or on your offer side. And so the test is really there to support you identifying where you have an opportunity to put more love in your life and in your business and the work that you do.
I think it's been wonderful getting a chance to share your story with our listeners and the journey. And thank you for really helping us to understand that it's a journey of self-discovery. What you start off as may not be the person that you will become. But if your journey is about finding who you are and gaining comfort and confidence in your own skin, imagine what you can do. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, so Finka Jerkovic, and you can find me on Instagram, Finka Jerkovic as well. And or you can visit me on my other website, which is finka.ca, so finka.ca. And if you want to learn more about Sell From Love, again, sellfromlove.com. So those are the ways in which people can get in touch with me and learn more about me and my work. So thank you, Hilda.
Thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed having this conversation where we have such busy lives that we get a tiny tidbit here and there, but just to spend some time and getting to learn you more and the journey that you've had. So